we go. What are you doing in my seat? Get out of here. You're just a hologram. What are you guys up to? It's getting really crowded in here. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you once again. If you're new here, this is the show. Look no further, because if you're like me and grew up on cartoons in the 90s, then this is the show where we go back and look at episodes of shows that we grew up on from the 90s, look at them episode by episode from the perspective of being an adult now, 25 years later. It's really just an excuse to watch cartoons. So join me along for the ride. If this sounds like something you might be interested in, hop below and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this, as we talk about an episode from Superman the Animated Series, Solar Power, which originally aired on September 26th, 1997.
The sunshine is so energizing.
In this episode, we finally see why we were setting up the character Lytener. Is that his name? Lytener, yeah. From Target a couple episodes ago. And it's because he becomes Luminous. Get it? Luminous? Lytener? Luminous? Lytener, even though he's very similar to a couple other DC villains. But we'll talk all about that right after our 60-second Brainiac bomb. It will explode in 60 seconds if I'm not able to give you a complete rundown of the episode in that amount of time. Here we go. Edward Lytener is in prison. He has a device that makes himself invisible. He steals a helicopter, takes off, and then the weather becomes very stormy, and Superman starts noticing his power is waning. And then Edward Lytener, now as Luminous, appears and cuts the cable car and uses Lois as bait to get Superman there. And he explains to him that he is now losing his power because he has blacked out, used the LexCorp satellites to black out the yellow sun so that only the red rays get through. And so Superman's losing his power, and Lois and Jimmy go to investigate and find an invisible building, and they go in there, and Superman follows and finds the place, and using holographs and holograms, he's able to go to these different areas of pirate ship and some other areas that they fight. And Superman, even though he's weak and he's fighting Luminous, he's able to deflect the laser back at him and destroy the satellites and regains his strength and takes him out. An anomaly.
You must be at, what, half strength by now?
Want to try me?
There is actually a lot in this episode. Luminous was not a character that I was familiar with going into this show, but he's a really cool villain. And I like that they're at least bringing full circle the Edward Lytener storyline. When I saw that in Target, I was going, what is the deal with this guy? Why does he exist? What is going on? And now they're bringing it full circle. He has now become this supervillain, Luminous, which is actually a really cool power to be able to refract light and holograms and disappear and project things in different areas. And it's all tech-driven rather than some mystical power that he has. And he is now going after Superman versus going after Lois Lane.
Testing time's over, Superman. Next time we meet, you die.
And this episode really starts off pretty strong. It has that mystery element that's interwoven into the story of what's going on with Superman. Why is he losing his power? Why isn't he as strong? How is this happening? And we're figuring it out right along with Superman as he's trying to figure out what's going on.
Bet it's the weather. Knocks me right out.
And with the sun being blocked out, it has now caused the yellow rays to be filtered out and only the red rays to get through, which makes the entire sky red. So now it feels like we're back in Gotham for the New Adventures of Batman. Maybe that's why their sky's red.
It's red.
Although we've seen it a couple of times in Batman, this, I think, is the first time that we've seen blood in the Superman adventures, which is even extra unusual for this because it's Superman that's bleeding. And he's got a little blood on his lip there that he has to clean up. And they kind of put a bigger focus in there about the blood because it's Superman rather than it just being, oh yeah, I got hit, I'm bleeding a little bit, as they have in Batman the Animated Series. Batman the Animated Series.
Ow.
So I enjoy Lytener as a character. However, he is a little bit like a couple other DC villains, like the Mirror Master, who uses mirrors to duplicate himself and project himself other ways, and Dr. Light, who's able to refract light and redirect it so that he can create himself into holograms and project other things. So I'm not sure why they didn't go with those villains versus Luminous, but it doesn't take away from the fact that that's just kind of a cool power for a villain. And it's something that he did himself. He created this inventions, used this technology, rather than, like I said, just having powers given to him by a wizard.
With the proper use of laser fields, the hologram actually feels quite solid, doesn't it?
I'm a little bit more forgiving of Target, because they were setting him up for this. But that episode's still weak. They should have just jumped right into this episode with Edward Lytener becoming Luminous.
Lytener! It's Luminous now.
And this is also another great opportunity for them to use the storyline and use the character to be able to do some different things with the show and broaden the scope of the stories and the circumstances that they can create in there. Is that because he can refract light and create holograms and things like that, it gives the opportunity for when Superman goes to fight him, that they're able to put Superman in these different situations. The Western saloon and in the train yard and on the pirate ship. And it makes for an interesting kind of battle. And I don't remember watching this episode when I was a kid, but that was the kind of stuff I was really into. In Star Trek The Next Generation, I always loved the holodeck because it just took the context of the story and put it in a totally different location and a totally different vibe and scenario. And they get to do that in this episode, and not just randomly, which was a bit of my issue with the Jonah Hex episode from Batman the Animated Series, was that they just went, oh, let me tell you a story. But here they're using his powers to create this whole situation of Batman battling in different circumstances.
Prepare to taste cold steel.
Which again is something they can get away with in Superman the Animated Series, and I don't think that worked as well in Batman. But speaking of Batman, when he goes to the train yard, that is the same train yard that they used in It's Never Too Late for Batman the Animated Series. And I saw that when I was watching this episode. I thought, boy, that looks very familiar. And I looked it up, and it is in fact the same design of that location.
Trying to scare me with holograms again?
And kudos to the animation in this, is especially in the 90s. I mean, you can look up all the continuity errors and the animation mistakes. And I think with the lack of computers in the animation, it's not that they didn't catch this stuff or didn't notice it. It's just not as easy to fix it when things would come up and they would be missed, and the glass is half full and then it's empty and then it's full, and it takes place during the day, and then this scene is at night, and they'd have all these different animators, and it was easy for those mistakes to slip by. But I do have to give kudos to this, because in this one, towards the end of the episode, Superman gets his cape cut by the laser, and they go on fighting and they battle and do all that. And then at the very end of the episode, Superman flies away, and you can still see that his cape is cut. And I think that would have been easy for that animation of him flying off into the sun being a recycled clip or something that had been used previously. But no, they not only animated that specifically for this episode, but they even animated the little tear in his cape, which I thought was a nice little touch.
Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, this is really solid. It's a really good episode. And coming from me, who didn't like Lytener's debut episode in Target at all, that we have this episode, now that we have the character set up, that was just a great fun ride. It starts off with a great mystery. It establishes great elements to the character. He's a well fleshed out villain, even though he's very similar to some other villains. He still holds his own, and it gives them the opportunity to play around with some of the different locations, and even just being able to duplicate himself and fight Superman in that way, and Superman doesn't know which one's the real one, is tremendous. So for all those reasons, it falls at the number 4 spot of my favorite episodes so far. It's just below the main man because the sci-fi elements of that episode just really kind of propel that off into a league of its own. versus this one that is good, but it doesn't have as many of those fantastical elements as the main man. And Lobo's just great fun to listen to. But it does beat out Blast from the Past, which is a well put together episode and solid story and good threats that Superman has to face. But I do think that Lytener and Luminous is a more interesting villain to face off against Superman.
How does it feel to be mortal, Superman? To know pain? Well, don't worry. You won't have to endure it for long.
So being the debut episode of Luminous, even though Edward Lytener was in a previous episode, for Luminous specifically, let me know, what do you think of the character Luminous? And who do you think would win in a fight? Luminous versus Mirror Master or versus Dr. Light? Who is the better light refracting villain? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed my take on this episode, then please take a moment to hit the like, thumbs up button. I always appreciate that. And if you want to see more episodes just like this one, then hit, well, not just like this one. If you want to watch just like this one, watch this episode again. But if you want to see episodes like this, talking about all the rest of the episodes of Superman the Animated Series, then hit the subscribe button and maybe even the bell notification so that you don't miss an episode, because I have new ones coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. And next up, we have A Brave New Metropolis, so you don't want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode, and I'll see you soon.